OP, I'm a never level. You may think you want beef till you see the devil.
Hello everyone, Kaiser here, and today I'm back with a new custom video, which is pretty much a Halloween special of me showing off 3 different Darkstalkers customs, that being John Talbane, Felicia, and Cienko. The reason that I've been working on these figures for quite a while is because when it comes to Darkstalker characters, at least for me, they're kind of difficult to make just because of how different they are in terms of design. And for characters like John and Felicia, I've always wanted to make them, but just wasn't sure how to get past some of the more difficult parts of their design, which I'll talk about more later. But I was able to pull it off, and I really like how all 3 of them came out. Now this video will be a little bit different since I won't be showing a work in progress, since I am showing off 3 figures, and this video is already going to be long enough. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoy, and let's get right into the customs. And here we have all 3 Darkstalkers figures finished, and first we will be starting with Cienko, since I think she was probably the hardest to complete out of all the ones I've done so far. And the reason that is because one of the figures that I want to use for her was the official Capcom Queen Cienko, which is kind of rare and kind of hard to find. The one that I found was used and kind of beat up, so it worked for me, but it didn't come with the hat and the dress was messed up. But those were things that I was able to fix, which I will get into. Starting with the head, as you can see, all I really did was resculpt the mouth somewhat to make it look like she was smiling a bit more. And then I mostly repainted the blue on the face and pretty much the entire figure, which is a Marvel Legends Spider-Gwen. And I used that since I wanted her to be a bit shorter. I did have to redo it quite a few times because I wasn't happy with the shade of blue that I had before until I settled on this, and I think it works pretty well. The hat is 3D printed, and the talisman she has I made out of tape. The symbols on it were kind of hard to do since they were so small, but I think it turned out pretty well. The main outfit itself is also pretty good, except for the back, like I said. And the reason that is because originally it had a Velcro strap, but for mine, the Velcro strap didn't work, and it made the figure look kind of bad. So I had my grandmother replace it with this zipper. So as you can see, it can zip up, and it looks a lot better. Yeah, there is a giant zipper on the back, but it's not like it's as distracting. I also kept the bow from the original figure, and I had her attach it to the belt essentially, and as you can see, it can clip on and off, and it stays pretty well. Now let's see if I can get this back on. There we go. The feet I repainted to make it look like she was wearing kung fu shoes, and the biggest obstacle, in case you already couldn't tell, was her claws. And the reason that is because I didn't know how to attach them, since at first I didn't know how she actually used the claws in the first place, until I stumbled upon some concept art where it shows her using like these giant, I'm not even sure what to call them, like these giant weapon holders. We'll call them weapon holders, where she uses her claws and all the other weapons she has. And that would have been a good idea, but it probably also would have weighed the figure down a lot. So what I did is I drilled 2 holes in the back of the figure where I would place wire, which would run through the actual giant sleeve that the dress had. And for the metal claws, I used like hands from another figure and sculpted over them, basically making a giant metal palm, and then I 3D printed the claws. And as you can see, the wire itself is bendy, so it's posable, which helps a lot with 1, standing up the figure, and 2, getting the claws into all different types of poses, which I think works pretty well for Cienko, since the claws are pretty much the main attraction here, and I'm glad that I was able to replicate them without there being any real problem. The articulation is pretty standard. It's just a basic Marvel Legends female figure. There's not really anything too different aside from the claws. But I still liked how the figure itself came out. I think she looks really cute, and she fits in really well with the rest of my Darkstalker figures, as you can see. Moving on to Felicia, she was probably the easiest one to do, mostly because it's just basically a repaint. The figure I used was a Marvel Legends Moonstone, and I got the one with the double jointed elbows. And all I really did was sand down the figure, resculpted the parts that I needed to, and then paint over it. Most of it is just naked skin, but that's how Felicia is, so it wasn't really that hard. And I'm glad that I took the time to sand down the figure, since it avoids paint rub, especially on, say, like the shoulders or the legs here. I'm really glad that that isn't an issue. Another thing I did was I used actual fur or yarn for her fur patterns, and this was probably the most tedious part because it was just a lot of gluing and making sure everything stayed in place. But I'm glad that I went through all of that because it turned out pretty well, and it doesn't get in the way of her articulation. The tail is just a pipe cleaner, not really much there. The hands, I believe, come from a Black Panther figure, or at least a figure from the most recent Black Panther wave. The feet come from a Marvel Legends Wild Child, both of which I repainted to make it look more like Felicia's. As you can see, I did the bottom, and then the hands have the little paws. I'm thinking of probably sculpting the paws just to make it look a bit better, but I still think it turned out pretty well. The head is made from a DC Superhero Girls. All I did was repaint the eyes, painted the lips and the eyebrows. Not really too much there. Her headband is made out of clay, and I had to sculpt the ears. And then the biggest obstacle, again, was the hair. Now, obviously, I could have sculpted the hair or 3D printed the head, but the problem with that is that I'm a person who likes articulation, and with Felicia's hair being so big, it would have restricted the movement of her head a lot. So I had my mother help me make the hair. As you can see, it's made out of yarn, so it gets out of the way. And we also used different shades of blue just to give it a bit more style, make it look a bit more unique. She had also actually curled the hair just to make it look a bit more, make it look larger than it actually is. And I love how it came out. Now, obviously, again, I could have just 3D printed the head, but I'm glad that we went with this since she composed the head looking up and it doesn't get in the way of anything. So yeah, that's all there really is to Felicia. Once again, the articulation is just standard Marvel Legends, but I am glad, again, I went with the Moonstone body, one, because it was white, so areas like her lower arms and her lower legs didn't really need to be painted, and the double jointed elbows, which just makes posing the figure a lot easier. Now, moving on to literally the biggest figure, we have John Talbing, and the base figure I went for him was the McFarlane Fortnite Dyer. The reason I went with this figure is because it was more of a stylized werewolf figure, which works well for both John and Darkstalkers, since the whole thing with them is being stylized. I could have gone with a more realistic looking werewolf, but I just don't think it would have fit in. But this one was probably the one that was the hardest to make. I know I said that for Cienko, but this one was so hard that I actually had to stop working on him for a bit, and I'll get into why. The head is pretty simple, and just the entire upper body here. I sanded down the headband and then pretty much repainted the head to make it look more like John, and I think it turned out pretty well. Then what I did was all the fur here is actual fur that I glued onto the body, and I went with this because similar to Felicia, I wanted it to be able to pose better, and I don't think it would have been possible if I had sculpted the hair. It goes pretty much all the way to his back, and again, I really like how this came out. The upper body was mostly just resculpted, but I also had to do a lot of modifications because I wanted this figure to be a bit smaller. And for John, I'm not sure how tall he actually is, since in some cases it looks like he's around maybe 5, maybe 6 feet, but in other cases it looks like he's like around 7. So I decided to go with kind of a middle ground and make him just slightly bigger than, like, say, a Marvel Legends figure. So I had to drill into the torso so I can one, work on the sculpting here, since I had to sculpt all the fur, and also make room for the articulation. As you can see, he can bend forward and back pretty far, and it does help with getting him into a lot of poses. The legs are, you can't see it because of the pants that my grandmother made, but all I really did was just sand down pretty much all of the pants that the original figure had, and I did that so that posing the figure would have been a lot easier. As you can see, he can kick forward and he can kick out to the side. He can pretty much do the full splits, which I really like for a martial arts character. The legs are mostly just repainted, but I'm also glad that you can do that. Again, helps with articulation. The tail is posable, and it's mostly made out of, if I can remember correctly, I think I had made like a fabric tail that I stuffed with fur and then placed fur over it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can watch one of Delightful's videos. I'll put a link in the description so you know how that process is done. But yeah, I pretty much made a big tail for John. Again, really like how that came out. The hands and the feet are painted yellow, or at least the toes and the claws are. I also extended the claws that he had, just to kind of make him look a bit more dangerous. And yeah, that's all I really have to say about John. He was definitely the figure that, well, he was definitely the figure I put the most effort into, mostly because I just wanted him to, be able to work. I want him to look good, and I want him to be able to pose very well. And I think for the most part, I was able to pull that off. And I can say that about the rest of the figures, since they were all pretty challenging to make because of just how different the Darkstalker characters are when it comes to designs. But when they're all put together like this, I think they look pretty good. So with that, let's get into some size comparisons. Here we have John Talbane standing next to the Marvel Legends Captain America and Thor, and as you can see, he is just a bit taller than Thor. Here he is standing next to my customized Jada Toys Ryu and the Mega Man X model kit from Kotobukiya. And here he is standing next to my custom Amaterasu figure and the Revoltech Palico from Monster Hunter. Here we have Felicia and Cienko next to the Marvel Legends Spider-Gwen and the Marvel Legends MCU Black Widow. Here they are next to my customized Jada Toys Chun-Li and the Revoltech Female Monster Hunter. And just for fun, here they are next to the SH Figuarts Power and the Buzzmod Nezuko from Demon Slayer. And of course, here we have all my Darkstalkers figures together, including the only official figure I have, the Storm Collectibles Dimitri. I am thinking of making a Dimitri that's more in line with 1/12 scale figures, but I do kind of like how big he is compared to the other figures. Makes him look a bit more imposing. But with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of multi-set of Darkstalkers figures that I've made. I thought it would be fun to do all three of them kind of as a Halloween special, and hopefully I can get this out by the time Halloween actually comes around. I am thinking of making a few more Darkstalkers figures, maybe like say Lilith or Akaris, and maybe even some other horror themed Capcom characters like Nemesis. That would be really fun to do. But with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys.
It'll be your defeat. The way I pour these words on beat, that shit like sorcery. All these eyes on me like Pac, I'm so disorderly. My heart so black, the doctor told me it's minority. Old age, but I got next. Got a hot head when I rage, every op dead. Tried to take my life away, I had to tell them not yet. I'm expanding my domain like I bought a .net. Richie.
I be walking with the dead. Got a monster and he's swimming in my head. I be walking with the dead. Take a minute to reflect, I be riding on the edge. I be walking with the dead. Got a monster and he's swimming in my head. I be walking walking with the dead. Take a minute to reflect, I'll be riding on the edge.